Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars through the viewing window. His 6 arms moved across different control panels as he reviewed the latest reports about the humans. The tall, blue-skinned alien had been watching these creatures for over 50 years now, and he was certain about one thing: they were weak. The reports all said the same thing. Humans were good at making deals and trading goods between planets. They built nice cities and schools. They loved art and music. But when it came to fighting, they always ran away or asked for help from the Galactic Council. "Sir, another human. Trade ship is asking permission to enter our space," reported his second-in-command. "A shorter alien with red skin and 4 eyes. They want to sell us their food products again." Zektar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Of course they do. Let them come. Take their goods and pay them half of what they ask for. They will accept it like they always do." This had been going on for decades. Humans would come to alien worlds with their hands open, smiling and talking about friendship. They never carried big weapons. Their ships were small and looked more like flying boxes than warships. Even their military vessels looked like toys compared to what real warrior races built. The Admiral remembered the first time humans had met other aliens. It was almost 100 years ago now. The humans had been so excited, sending messages about peace and cooperation. They had shared their technology freely, invited aliens to visit Earth, and joined every treaty they could find. Other alien races had tested them over the years. The Corvan Empire had taken some human mining stations by force. The humans complained to the Council, held meetings, and eventually just built new stations somewhere else. The Stellar Federation had blocked human trade routes for months. The humans found new routes and even offered to share them with everyone. Every time someone pushed humans, they would bend like soft metal. They never pushed back. They never got angry. They just found ways to work around problems or gave up what they wanted to avoid fights. "The human colony ships are moving to the Outer Rim again," the red-skinned officer reported. "They are asking the Hegemony Council for permission to settle on 3 empty worlds." "Empty worlds that we might want someday," Zektar said. "Tell them no. Let them go find rocks to live on somewhere else." The officer nodded and sent the message. Within an hour, they received a polite reply from the humans. They understood completely and would look for other worlds. They even thanked the Hegemony for considering their request. Zektar shook his head in disgust. What kind of species was this? Every other race in the galaxy had fought wars to claim territory. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak either fought back or got destroyed. But humans just said thank you and walked away. He pulled up the intelligence files on human military forces. The numbers were laughable. They had maybe 1,000 combat ships spread across dozens of star systems. Most were small patrol boats or defense platforms around their colonies. Their largest warships were smaller than his personal transport vessel. Earth itself was protected by a handful of orbital stations and some missile platforms. The humans spent more money on their museums and parks than on their military. Their soldiers trained for only a few years, then went back to civilian jobs. Compare that to his own warriors, who spent their entire lives preparing for battle. "Sir, the humans have sent their yearly offer to help with scientific research," his officer said, reading from a communication tablet. "They want to share data about star mapping and medical advances." "Always sharing, always helping," Zektar muttered. "They are like children who never learned that the universe is dangerous." The truth was, the Hegemony had been planning to expand into human space for years now. The humans controlled some of the best trade routes in the galaxy, and their worlds were rich in resources. But the Council had always held back, not wanting to seem too aggressive to the other major powers. But lately, things had changed. The other great races were busy fighting each other over territory in the galactic core. The Andromedans were dealing with a civil war. The Crystal Empire was focused on their expansion in the southern spiral arm. This was the perfect time to make a move. Zektar looked at the star charts showing human space. 57 colonies spread out like beads on a string along the outer rim. Most were lightly defended. Many had no military presence at all. Taking them would be like picking fruit from a tree. The humans had one advantage that had protected them so far. They were useful. Their ships carried goods between worlds that hated each other. Their diplomats helped solve problems between different alien races. Their scientists made discoveries that everyone benefited from, but usefulness only protected you as long as you were weak. The moment humans became strong enough to be a threat, other races would destroy them. Zektar was sure that humans would never reach that point. They were too soft, too peaceful, too willing to give up rather than fight. Prepare a report for the War Council, he ordered. I want detailed information about human colony defenses, trade routes, and military positions. It is time we stopped letting these creatures waste valuable space. His officers' four eyes widened with excitement. Are we finally going to take action, sir? Soon, Zektar said. Very soon. The humans think their weakness protects them. They think that being peaceful means other races will leave them alone. They are about to learn how wrong they are. He turned back to the viewing window, looking out at the stars that would soon belong to the hegemony. Somewhere out there, human families were living their quiet lives, thinking they were safe because they had never hurt anyone. They went to work, raised their children, and dreamed about exploring new worlds. They had no idea that their neighbors were planning to take everything from them. They trusted in treaties and laws and the protection of the Galactic Council. But treaties were just words, and the Council only protected those who could protect themselves. The Admiral smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The humans were about to get a lesson in how the real universe worked. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak suffered. It had always been this way, and it always would be. In his mind, he could already see human colonies burning, their trade ships destroyed, their people begging for mercy. It would be quick and easy. The humans would probably surrender after losing just 1 or 2 worlds. They would sign whatever papers the hegemony put in front of them and go back to being useful servants. That was how it worked with weak races. You hit them once hard enough to show them their place, and then they served you forever. The humans would make good slaves. They were smart and hardworking, and they already knew how to run trade networks and manage resources. Zektar began making plans for the invasion. He would start with one of their smaller colonies, something far from Earth but important enough to send a message. The humans would learn that their time of peaceful expansion was over. The age of human weakness was about to end. What would replace it? Neither Zektar nor any other alien could imagine. The warning sirens on New Geneva started screaming at 3 a.m. local time. Captain Sarah Chen rolled out of her bed in the military command center, her feet hitting the cold metal floor as red emergency lights flashed throughout the room. Report, she shouted, pulling on her uniform as she ran to the command console. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Her communications officer called out, his voice tight with fear. Big ones, Captain. Really big ones. Sarah looked at the tactical display and felt her blood turn cold. 68 enemy ships had appeared at the edge of the system, and they were not there for a friendly visit. The largest vessels were massive battleships, each one bigger than New Geneva's entire defense fleet. Send an emergency message to Earth. Command, she ordered. Tell them we have hostile forces incoming. Unknown intent, but assuming the worst. New Geneva was a peaceful colony world, home to 200,000 humans who had come here to start new lives. They grew food, ran research stations, and traded with passing alien ships. The colony had only 12 defense platforms and 8 patrol ships to protect it. Captain, incoming transmission from the lead enemy vessel, the communications officer. Reported. Put it through. A massive alien face filled the main screen. Sarah recognized the species. Hegemony Council military, probably high-ranking from all the metal decorations on his blue skin. When he spoke, his voice was cold and formal. Human colony of New Geneva, this is Admiral Zektar of the Hegemony. Warfleet, you are occupying space that belongs to the Council. You have 1 hour to evacuate all personnel and surrender your facilities. Any resistance will be met with complete destruction. Sarah stepped forward, her jaw set with determination. This is Captain Sarah Chen, commanding officer of New Geneva Defense Force. This colony was legally established under Galactic Council treaties. We are not military targets. We demand you withdraw immediately. Zektar laughed, the sound making Sarah's skin crawl. Treaties are for equals, human. You are not our equals. You have 59 minutes remaining. The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Sarah looked around at her officers, seeing fear and confusion on their faces. Most of them had never been in real combat before. New Geneva had always been a quiet posting. "Ma'am, what are your orders?" asked Lieutenant Rodriguez, her second in command. Sarah took a deep breath. She knew they could not win this fight. 68 enemy ships against their small defense force. It would be like trying to stop a hurricane with an umbrella. But these people were depending on her to protect them. "Send evacuation orders to all civilian areas," she said. "Get transport ships loaded with families first. Children and elderly have priority. All defense platforms are to charge weapons and prepare for combat. All patrol ships form up in defensive formation." "Captain," her tactical officer said quietly, "our weapons cannot even scratch their heavy armor. Those are full battleships out there." "Then we make them work for it," Sarah replied. "Every minute we hold them up is another minute for civilians to escape." The next hour passed like a nightmare in slow motion. Transport ships launched from the planet's surface, carrying families away from the coming destruction. But there were not enough ships, and not enough time. Most of the colonists were still on the ground when the enemy fleet began moving into attack formation. Sarah watched the tactical display as the massive alien ships spread out around New Geneva. They moved with professional precision, cutting off escape routes and surrounding the planet completely. These were not raiders or pirates. This was a full military operation. "Captain, they're powering up weapons," the tactical officer reported. "Energy readings are off the charts." "All defense platforms open fire," Sarah ordered. "All patrol ships attack pattern Delta." New Geneva's defenders fought with everything they had. The defense platforms launched their missiles in coordinated volleys. The patrol ships darted between the massive enemy vessels, firing their small weapons at critical systems. For a few minutes it looked like they might actually hurt the attackers. Then the hegemony fleet returned fire. The first salvo destroyed half of New Geneva's defense platforms in seconds. Massive energy beams cut through space, turning metal and electronics into glowing vapor. The patrol ships tried to dodge, but the enemy weapons were too fast and too powerful. Sarah watched in horror as her ships died one by one. The patrol boat, New Hope, simply vanished in a ball of fire. The Star Runner broke apart when enemy missiles overwhelmed its shields. Her people were dying, and there was nothing she could do to save them. "Platform 7 is gone," someone reported. "Platform 3 has lost power." "Keep fighting," Sarah ordered, though her voice was breaking. "Make every shot count." The enemy fleet moved closer to the planet, beginning their bombardment of the surface. Sarah could see the explosions from orbit as energy beams struck the colony's cities. The research stations exploded in massive fireballs. The farming complexes burned like torches in the night. "Captain, we're getting reports from the surface," the communications officer said, tears running down his face. "The civilian shelters are taking direct hits. They're not even trying to avoid non-military targets. This was not a conquest. This was murder. The aliens were deliberately targeting civilian areas, killing families who had done nothing wrong." Sarah felt rage building in her chest, a cold anger that pushed away her fear. "All remaining ships form up on me," she commanded. "We're making a direct attack on their flagship." "Captain, that's suicide," Lieutenant Rodriguez protested. "We're dead anyway," Sarah replied. "At least this way we take some of them with us." The last 4 patrol ships of New Geneva's fleet charged straight at Admiral Zektar's massive battleship. Their small weapons fired continuously, sparks flying off the enemy vessel's thick armor. They never had a chance. Sarah's ship was the last one destroyed. As enemy fire tore through her vessel's hull, she managed to send one final message to Earth Command. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of New Geneva Defense Force. We held the line as long as we could. Tell Earth what they did to us. Tell them the hegemony killed civilians, murdered families. Make sure everyone knows." The transmission cut off as her ship exploded in a burst of light. On the planet's surface, the bombardment continued for another hour. The hegemony fleet systematically destroyed every human structure they could find. Cities, farms, schools, hospitals, nothing was spared. When they were finished, New Geneva was a burned and lifeless rock. Admiral Zektar looked at the destruction with satisfaction. The operation had gone perfectly. No human ships had escaped to carry word of what happened here. As far as the rest of the galaxy knew, New Geneva had simply gone silent. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "Inform them that the hegemony has claimed this system under rights of expansion. Any human ships attempting to return here will be destroyed." The alien fleet departed, leaving behind only wreckage and graves. 200,000 humans were dead, killed for the crime of living on a world someone else wanted. But Sarah Chen's final message had gotten through. Somewhere in the darkness of space, automated relay stations carried her words toward Earth. The message would take months to arrive, but when it did, everything would change. The hegemony thought they had struck a blow against a weak enemy. They had no idea they had just signed their own death warrant. The message from New Geneva reached Earth on a cold Tuesday morning. Admiral Marcus Torres was drinking his coffee in his office at Luna Command when his aide burst through the door, her face pale and her hands shaking as she held a data tablet. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Torres took the tablet and read Captain Chen's final transmission. His coffee mug fell from his hand, shattering on the floor as the words sank in. 200,000 civilians murdered. Families, children, elderly people who had never hurt anyone in their lives. "Get me the Secretary General," he said quietly. "Now." Within 6 hours, every major human leader was gathered in the emergency session chamber deep beneath Geneva. The room had not been used since the Unification Wars 2 centuries ago, but the old system still worked. Presidents, prime ministers, admirals, and generals sat around a circular table, their faces grim as they watched the recording of New Geneva's destruction. "The aliens think they can kill our people and walk away," said President Martinez of the South American Federation. "They think we are too weak to respond." "They have made a terrible mistake," replied Admiral Chen of the Pacific Fleet, Sarah Chen's uncle. His voice was cold as winter steel. "They do not understand what they have awakened." Secretary General Williams stood up slowly. She was an old woman, one of the few people still alive who remembered the last time humanity had gone to war. Her grandfather had fought in the resource wars and her father had served in the unification campaigns. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying the weight of history, "for 100 years we have shown the galaxy our peaceful face. We have been traders, diplomats, and explorers. We have shared our knowledge and offered friendship to every species we have met." She walked to a wall display showing the locations of human colonies throughout the galaxy. 56 worlds were marked in blue. New Geneva's marker had turned red. "The aliens see this and think we are weak," she continued. "They see our merchant ships and our diplomats, and they believe we have forgotten how to fight. They are wrong." Torres stood up, his uniform crisp and his face hard. "I am requesting authorization for Total War Protocol 7. Full industrial mobilization, unlimited military authority, and complete recall of all human forces." The room fell silent. Protocol 7 had been written during the darkest days of the Unification Wars, when humanity had nearly destroyed itself. It had never been used, but every leader knew what it meant. When Protocol 7 was activated, the entire human species became a military force. "All in favor?" asked Secretary General Williams. Every hand in the room rose. Motion carried. "Admiral Torres, humanity is now under your command. Do whatever it takes to make them pay for what they did to our people." The transformation began immediately. Across human space, industrial complexes that had been building civilian ships suddenly switched to military production. Mining stations that had been extracting metals for construction started making weapons and armor. Agricultural worlds began, growing rations for military forces that did not yet exist but soon would. On Earth, the great shipyards of Luna, Mars, and the asteroid belt roared to life. Humans who had been engineers, teachers, and shopkeepers reported to assembly lines, their faces set with determination. The alien races had seen human efficiency in trade and commerce. Now they would see it applied to war. Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins stood in her laboratory on Titan, looking at blueprints that had not been opened in decades. She had spent her career designing better engines for merchant ships. Now she was adapting those same designs for weapons of war. "How long to build the first batch of dreadnoughts?" asked her assistant, a young man who had been designing hospital equipment just a week ago. 6 months for the prototype," she replied. "After that, we can build them faster than the aliens can count them." The ships taking shape in human shipyards were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They combined the industrial efficiency that humans had perfected over centuries with weapons technology that had been sleeping in classified archives since the Unification Wars. Admiral Torres walked through the construction bays of Luna Shipyard, watching as the first of the new vessels took shape. The ship was massive, larger than anything humans had built before, its hull bristling with weapons and armor. "What are you going to call her, sir?" asked the chief engineer. Torres looked at the name painted on the ship's hull in letters 10 feet tall. USS Righteous Fury. She and her sisters are going to deliver a message that the galaxy will never forget. In military academies across human space, instructors pulled out textbooks that had been gathering dust for generations. Young cadets who had expected to spend their careers on peaceful patrol missions found themselves studying the tactics of ancient human generals. Alexander, Napoleon, Patton, Yamamoto. "The aliens have made one critical error," explained Colonel Harrison to a room full of eager young officers. "They think that because we have been peaceful, we do not know how to fight. But peace is not weakness. Peace is a choice, and we are choosing to set it aside." The students leaned forward in their seats as Harrison activated a holographic display showing famous battles from human history: Gettysburg, Stalingrad, Midway, the siege of Beijing during the Resource Wars. "Humanity did not become peaceful because we were weak," he continued. "We became peaceful because we were too good at war. We nearly destroyed ourselves with our own weapons. But now someone else has chosen to remind us what we are capable of." Secret research facilities that had been working on theoretical physics suddenly found their projects militarized. The artificial gravity generators that made comfortable living on space stations became weapons that could crush enemy ships. The faster-than-light communication systems that connected human colonies became coordination networks for military operations. On distant worlds, human colonists who had been farmers and shopkeepers began receiving military training. Children learned to use weapons alongside their regular schoolwork. Grandparents who had served in the last human wars came out of retirement to teach the skills they had hoped never to use again. The aliens continued their normal activities, unaware of the storm gathering in human space. Their intelligence reports still showed humans as peaceful traders. Their spy networks detected increased industrial activity, but assumed it was just economic expansion. Admiral Zektar received updated reports about human activities with bored indifference. The humans were building more ships, but they were probably just trying to replace what they had lost at New Geneva. Even if they built 100 ships, it would not matter. The hegemony had thousands. He had no idea that humans were not building hundreds of ships. They were building thousands. And these were not the small patrol vessels that the galaxy was used to seeing. These were weapons of war designed by a species that had spent millions of years learning how to kill each other more efficiently. In the depths of space, far from any alien observation, the first human war fleet was taking shape. Massive dreadnoughts, with armor thicker than building walls. Carriers that could launch fighter squadrons by the hundreds. Cruisers designed to hunt down and destroy anything that moved. Each ship bore names that would have terrified the aliens if they had understood their meaning. USS Gettysburg, HMS Trafalgar, UNSV Stalingrad. Every vessel was named after a battle where humans had shown what they were capable of when pushed too far. The fleet of revenge was coming, and when it arrived, the galaxy would learn why humanity had chosen peace in the first place. Commander Vexhall of the Hegemony Border Patrol was having a quiet morning when his sensors officer started screaming. The young alien's 4 eyes were wide with terror as he stared at his detection screens, his clawed hands shaking as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. "Sir, multiple contacts approaching the Kepler 442 system. They're huge, sir. I've never seen energy signatures like this." Vexhall rushed to look at the sensor display, expecting to see maybe a dozen human patrol ships trying to probe hegemony defenses. What he saw instead made his blood freeze in his veins. The tactical screen showed over 300 contacts moving in perfect formation toward their position. "That cannot be right," he said, his voice cracking. "Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array." "I already did, sir. 3 times. The readings are correct. Whatever is coming toward us, it's bigger than anything in our databases." Vexhall activated the long-range cameras and nearly fainted at what they showed him. The human fleet stretched across space like a wall of metal and death. Ships the size of small moons moved in perfect formation, their hulls bristling with weapons that looked like they could crack planets in half. "Get me Admiral Zektar immediately," he ordered. "Priority 1 emergency transmission." But before he could send the message, every communication system on his ship suddenly activated at once. The bridge filled with a human voice speaking perfect hegemony standard, cold and emotionless. "Attention, hegemony forces. This is Admiral Marcus Torres of the Human Retaliation Fleet. You are trespassing in space that belongs to the victims of New Geneva. You have 10 minutes to surrender your ships and prepare to be taken prisoner. This is your only warning." Vexhall looked at his tactical display. The human fleet had them completely surrounded. When had they moved so fast? His sensors had shown them at the edge of the system just moments ago. "Sir, what are your orders?" his weapons officer asked. Before Vexhall could answer, space around them lit up with weapons fire. But it was not the humans shooting. Admiral, Korth's 7th Fleet, the same ships that had destroyed New Geneva, had arrived to reinforce the border patrol. "This is Admiral Korth to all units," came the arrogant voice over the communication system. "These are the same weak humans we defeated before. Show them what hegemony power looks like. All ships open fire." 150 hegemony warships opened fire at the same time, their weapons lighting up space with deadly energy beams and missile volleys. It was enough firepower to destroy entire planets. The barrage struck the human fleet head-on. The humans did not even slow down. Energy beams that could melt through battleship armor bounced harmlessly off human shields. Missiles that could destroy space stations exploded uselessly against human defensive screens. The entire hegemony attack might as well have been throwing rocks at a mountain. "Impossible," whispered Vexhall. "Nothing can survive that kind of firepower." Then the humans returned fire. The first human dreadnought, USS Righteous Fury, fired a single shot from its main gun. The energy beam was so powerful that it lit up the entire star system. When the light faded, Admiral Korth's flagship had simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was a cloud of rapidly expanding gas. "Target eliminated," came Torres's voice over the communication system. "All human ships, you are cleared to engage. Show them no mercy." What followed was not a battle. It was systematic destruction on a scale that the galaxy had never witnessed. Human dreadnoughts moved through space like ancient gods of war, their weapons turning enemy ships into scrap metal with casual ease. The carrier HMS Trafalgar launched wave after wave of fighter craft, each one faster and more deadly than anything the hegemony had ever built. Swarms of human fighters tore through enemy formations like bullets through paper. Vexhall watched in horror as his entire fleet was torn apart in minutes. Ships that had been the pride of the hegemony navy exploded like firecrackers. Crews that had terrorized dozens of worlds screamed for mercy as human weapons found their targets with impossible accuracy. "Surrender," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We surrender, please stop shooting." The human weapons fell silent immediately. Every ship in the hegemony fleet had been destroyed except for Vexhall's border patrol vessel, which had not fired a shot. Torres's voice came over the communication system again, still cold, but no longer emotionless. "Commander Vexhall, you are being taken prisoner. Your crew will be treated according to the laws of war as long as you cooperate. You will be returned to hegemony space with a message for your leaders." Vexhall nodded frantically, even though the humans could not see him. Yes, sir. We will cooperate completely. Human Marines boarded his ship within the hour. They moved with military precision that made hegemony soldiers look like children playing war. Their armor was sleek and practical. Their weapons looked like they could punch holes through battleship hulls. The human lieutenant who took his surrender was a young woman with cold eyes and the bearing of a professional soldier. She accepted his weapon with polite efficiency, then handed him a data tablet. "These are the terms of your surrender," she said. "You will carry this message back to your Admiral Zektar. Make sure he understands every word." Vexhall read the message and felt his heart skip several beats. It was not a demand for surrender or a list of terms for peace. It was a declaration of total war, written in language that left no room for doubt or negotiation. "Admiral Zektar and the Hegemony Council," it read. "You have committed acts of war against human civilians. You have murdered families, destroyed colonies, and shown that you believe humans are too weak to respond. You were wrong. The human retaliation fleet is coming for you. We will destroy every military ship you have, capture every world you control, and drag your leaders before tribunals to answer for their crimes. You chose this war when you killed our people. Now you will face the consequences." The message was signed by Admiral Torres and sealed with the official mark of the Human Defense Command. The lieutenant looked at Vexhall with something that might have been pity. "Commander, how many people did you personally kill at New Geneva?" "None," Vexhall said quickly. "I was not part of that operation. I am just border patrol." "Good. That is the only reason you are still alive. Admiral Torres wants you to see what happens next, so you can tell your people what they are facing." Over the next week, Vexhall watched from his cell as the human retaliation fleet moved through hegemony space like a force of nature. Every military installation they encountered was destroyed. Every warship that tried to fight them was turned into wreckage. But civilian targets were left completely untouched. Human Marines landed on hegemony worlds and went straight to the military bases, ignoring everything else. They did not loot cities or terrorize populations. They came, destroyed the military targets, and left. It was surgical, professional, and absolutely terrifying. "Why do you not kill everyone?" Vexhall asked the lieutenant during one of their conversations. "Your people could wipe out entire worlds if you wanted to." The young woman looked at him with those cold eyes. "Because we are not like you. We do not murder civilians. We do not target families. We are soldiers, not butchers." "But you could destroy us all?" "Yes," she said simply. "We could turn every hegemony world into a burned rock if we wanted to, but we do not want to. We want justice for the people you killed at New Geneva. When we have that, the war will end." As the human retaliation fleet continued its advance toward the hegemony core worlds, word spread throughout the galaxy. The peaceful humans, the species that everyone had dismissed as weak traitors, had revealed themselves to be the most powerful military force anyone had ever seen. Other alien races that had been planning their own attacks on human space quietly canceled those operations. The Corvin Empire, which had been building up forces near human colonies, suddenly decided to focus on improving diplomatic relations. And deep in hegemony space, Admiral Zektar stared at reports of his fleets being systematically destroyed and realized that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not coming to negotiate or ask for tribute. They were coming for revenge. Admiral Zektar stood in the War Council chamber on the hegemony capital world, watching as the tactical displays showed the complete destruction of his military forces. Red markers indicated destroyed fleets, yellow ones showed bases that had been captured, and blue ones marked worlds that had surrendered without a fight. There was very little blue on the map. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked his aide, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. 47 combat vessels, sir," came the quiet reply. "All of them are either damaged or running low on supplies. The humans have cut off all our supply lines." 47 ships. 3 months ago, the hegemony had commanded over 2,000 warships, the most powerful military force in their region of the galaxy. Now they had fewer vessels than a typical patrol squadron. The humans had done this with surgical precision. They had not attacked civilian targets or destroyed cities. Instead, they had focused entirely on military installations, supply depots, and warships. Every battle had been a one-sided massacre, with human technology proving superior in every possible way. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet," the communications officer announced. "They are requesting to speak with you directly." Zektar straightened his uniform and tried to look dignified, even though his world was falling apart around him. "Put it through." The main screen showed the bridge of a human warship. Admiral Torres sat in the command chair, surrounded by efficient-looking officers who moved with the confidence of people who had never lost a battle. Behind them, Zektar could see displays showing the complete tactical situation. "Admiral Zektar," Torres said, his voice calm and professional. "I am calling to discuss the terms of your surrender." "We have not surrendered," Zektar replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Torres smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, my fleet is in orbit around your capital world. Your military forces have been destroyed. Your colonies have been liberated. Your government is hiding in bunkers while my Marines control every major city on this planet. If this is not surrender, what would you call it?" Zektar looked at his tactical displays, hoping to find some sign that Torres was bluffing. But the screen showed the truth. Hundreds of human ships surrounded the planet while hegemony forces were nowhere to be found. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Justice for the people you murdered at New Geneva," Torres replied. "Full reparations for the damage you caused, and guarantees that nothing like this will ever happen again." A member of the Hegemony Council stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "You cannot dictate terms to us. We are a sovereign government. The Galactic Council will never accept this." Torres looked at the council member with the same expression he might use to examine an interesting insect. "Counselor, 3 hours ago I received formal communications from 17 major galactic powers. They are all offering to help enforce whatever peace terms I decide to impose. It seems the galaxy has gotten tired of your aggressive expansion policies." The counselor's face went pale. "That is impossible." "Actually, it makes perfect sense," Torres continued. "For decades, the hegemony has been bullying smaller species, taking their resources and threatening anyone who opposed you. The only reason other races tolerated this behavior was because they thought humans were too weak to do anything about it." Torres stood up from his command chair and walked closer to the screen. "They were wrong, and now everyone knows it. The Andromedans have offered to provide occupation forces for your conquered territories. The Crystal Empire wants to help with war crimes tribunals. Even species that barely have space travel are volunteering to assist with reconstruction efforts." Zektar felt a chill run through his body. The humans had not just defeated the hegemony militarily, they had completely destroyed their political power as well. "The terms are simple," Torres continued. "First, you will pay full reparations for the destruction of New Geneva. That includes compensation for every person killed, every building destroyed, and every life disrupted." "We do not have those resources," Zektar protested. "Then you will work until you do. Second, all hegemony military forces will be disbanded. Your warships will be scrapped, your weapons destroyed, and your military leaders tried for war crimes. You cannot disarm an entire species. Watch me. Third, all territories conquered by the hegemony in the past 50 years will be returned to their original inhabitants or granted independence. Fourth, the hegemony government will be restructured under galactic oversight to ensure this never happens again." Torres paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "These terms are not negotiable, Admiral. You can accept them now, or I can reduce your world to rubble and impose them anyway. Your choice." Zektar looked around the War Council chamber at his fellow officers and government officials. He saw fear in their eyes, but also resignation. They knew they had lost completely. "If we agree to these terms, what happens to us personally?" he asked. "That depends on your level of involvement in war crimes," Torres replied. "Officers who participated in the attack on New Geneva will face trial. Those who can prove they opposed the action or were not involved may be allowed to return to civilian life under supervision." One of the younger hegemony officers stepped forward. Admiral Torres, I want you to know that many of us oppose the attack on your colony. Admiral Zektar ordered it against the advice of his staff. Zektar turned on his subordinate with fury. Traitor, how dare you? Enough, Torres interrupted. Admiral, you are out of time. Do you accept the terms of surrender? Zektar looked at the screens showing human ships surrounding his world, then at his own officers who were clearly ready to throw him to the humans rather than continue this hopeless war. He had gambled everything on the belief that humans were weak and he had lost. The Hegemony Council accepts your terms, he said quietly. Excellent. My Marines will be landing within the hour to take custody of all military personnel and government officials. You will be treated fairly according to galactic law. But make no mistake, the age of hegemony aggression is over. 6 months later, Zektar sat in a comfortable cell on Luna, reading reports about the reconstruction of New Geneva. The humans had rebuilt the colony exactly as it had been before, complete with memorials for everyone who had died in the attack. The trial proceedings had been fair but thorough. Officers who had planned or participated in the attack on civilians received long prison sentences. Those who had opposed it or were not involved were released with restrictions on their future activities. The galaxy had changed completely. Human ships now patrolled the space lanes, ensuring that trade routes stayed open and protecting smaller species from aggression. The technology they had revealed during the war was being shared freely, improving life for billions of beings across dozens of worlds. Other species that had been planning expansion through military force quietly abandoned those plans. The Corvan Empire signed new trade agreements with their neighbors rather than invade them. The Stellar Federation dismantled half their military and focused on exploration instead. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the human xenobiologist assigned to his case, visited him regularly to discuss galactic politics and the changes happening throughout known space. Your people are remarkably efficient, he told her during one visit. In 6 months, you have reshaped the entire balance of power. We prefer cooperation to conquest, she replied. But we learned long ago that sometimes you have to fight to protect peaceful people. I still do not understand how you hid your true capabilities for so long. Warren smiled. We did not hide them, Admiral. We simply chose not to use them. There is a difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to fight. Zektar nodded slowly. A lesson my people learned too late. Perhaps. But your younger officers are adapting well to the new reality. Some of them are even serving aboard human ships now, helping to keep the peace. Through his cell window, Zektar could see Earth's blue oceans and green continents. It looked peaceful and beautiful, exactly like the kind of world that weak species might build. Only now he understood that the appearance of peace was not the same thing as weakness. Humanity had chosen to be peaceful traders and diplomats. But, when pushed too far, they had revealed the iron will and devastating military power that had carried them from a single world to the stars. The galaxy would not forget this lesson anytime soon, and neither would Zektar, as he spent the rest of his life paying for the mistake of underestimating the species that had mastered both peace and war.